Hey friends, 2 days after interviewing one boy genius, I'm now blessed to talk to another boy genius who claims that he's older than the first boy genius, but I'll let him explain that in a second. So I guess if that was boy genius number one, this is boy genius number two. I'll call myself man genius in welcoming David Quadrelli, better known as Quads, to the Zoom chat room. Quads, welcome, man.
Hey, thank you for having me. I got to stop you though, because I'm no boy genius. You've said that before about me and Harmon, and you said, oh, together their genius level is greater than mine. I'm like, Harmon makes up about 80% of our genius level. I'm the final 20%. I help him with titles. That's how Harmon and I's friendship works.
Well, you're very humble, Quads, but is it true? Is it true that you are indeed older than Harm?
I am. I think I've got him by about 3 or 4 months. I think I got him by 4 months.
Oh, that's awesome. But in all seriousness, I appreciate everything that you do and how meteoric your rise has been, just as Harm's has been. And I had a good chance to talk to him and affirm him a couple of days ago. And I want to do the same to you. You are doing some wonderful, wonderful stuff, man. I know Canucks fans all around appreciate what you do.
Appreciate that, my friend.
Well, let's get into it. Let's talk a bit about the two things that at least jump to the forefront for me are your work with Canucks Army and your work on your podcast, Canucks Conversation. So let's start on the written side. Canucks Army, managing editor, right? So what does that mean?
It means I edit everything that goes on the site, including articles that have exercise instead of exercise, the wrong spelling, which was the story of the day today. I woke up at 11 o'clock, I want to say, and that's the first thing I saw. So yeah,
because you were talking about
also edited by me.
Fitness level for demons, right? Exercising your demons, isn't that?
Exactly. That's what I meant. It wasn't because I was editing it at 2 a.m. after playing Call of Duty all night. That's not why.
That is awesome. So it was correct on your tweet, but it wasn't correct on the title. Is that correct?
Correct in everywhere. And then I had to correct it myself, which was quite a process. But yeah, that's basically like my duties at Canucks Army. I do the weekly mailbag, which is kind of like my column. People send in questions. You can find me on the Twitter there, and that's where I put out the prompt for questions. A lot of great stuff comes in usually. So I have a lot of fun with those. I do those every Monday, as the past managing editors did. And then, editing, writing stories. I'm on the Zoom calls with the players. I would be at practices and stuff like that. And yeah, that's basically what I do. I kind of just run the show there and try and make sure everybody's on task, give out content plans, and try and make Canucks Army the best it can be.
And are they pitching ideas to you, or are you pitching ideas to them, or both?
Bit of both. So when I took over, something I was looking at, I was watching videos online about how to be a good manager in any place of work. And I think the main thing I took away from what I was watching was put people in positions to succeed. So with a guy like Brett Lee, somebody who I'm a big fan of, like, he's really good at analyzing stuff, right? So if there's little aspects in a game, little things that would happen in a game, I would say, hey, Brett, like, this was interesting to me. I know you could probably do it better than I could, because that's not really a strength of mine. So Brett, like, what are your thoughts on this? And I kind of just talk shop with them, let them figure out what they want to do. I don't really assign stories, but I encourage people to do things that they're good at and things that will, it'll be the best work they can produce. So that's what I try to do. And yeah, it's a lot of people just giving me work, and I'm like, all right, this is great. And then a lot of it is also me just kind of being like, hey, like, what do you think about doing this? And that sort of thing.
And Brett's a good example. You may know, or a lesser known fact maybe, that Brett actually helped start the GLCPC with me. Now, sadly, I don't give him as much credit as I should. I always say that I'm the founder, but it was actually through meeting him at the arena one day that we were joking around how we're both positive and we're both good looking. And the GLCPC was born from that one chat. So maybe I should give him some more credit, but yeah, I love his work, his video work, and obviously just his analysis and his knowledge of the game. I presume though that, there's some people that you have to edit, and you're not going to have to give up names, but there's some people you have to edit a little more than others.
Chris Faber. No, Chris Faber actually has grown so much as a writer. And I'm super proud to work with him, and I'm sure we'll get into it about Canucks Convo, but he's kind of like a go-to guy now, and his work, I cannot say enough good things about him. Just guy wakes up at like 5 a.m. to watch Russian hockey. He's like, our professor might not like this, but he's watching hockey while he's in a Zoom call with us for class. Like, he's in class and the guy's watching like Russian hockey. Like, that's not easy to do. And his work ethic is awesome, and that's why I think we make a good team.
Oh, yes. And I do want to talk about that in a few minutes. You know, an interesting thing, I've followed Canucks Army throughout the years, and different managing editors, different even almost styles and just perceptions and reputation. What do you think that a Canucks Army under David Quadrelli brings, and what's kind of cool and what's special about what you guys are doing right now, or what you hope to do?
Well, I think I'm trying to do a lot of what the old managing editors were doing, and I have a lot of great mentors. I've got, Patrick Johnson's been really good to me. Thomas Drance, again, can't say enough good things about him and how he prepared me for the role. And again, like even the people might not want to hear, Jackson McDonald, JD Burke, like these guys were huge for me. Like JD Burke, I was worried about becoming managing editor. I was nervous. JD Burke texts me and says, "Hey, I'll give you an editing crash course over the span of 2 hours." And you ask anybody who's written at Canucks Army under JD Burke, like he's the best editor that most people have ever had. I had Jackson, who I really appreciated. His editing was awesome, and he taught me so much about how I could improve as a writer. And then I had JD to teach me how to be great as an editor. I don't take advice from JD too much on how to stir up people on Twitter, but maybe I should sooner or later. But he's really good at that. But he's also very, very good at editing, and he was huge for me and made me so comfortable with my job. And just, he really made me believe that this is something I could do and it's something I could do well.
Oh, that's awesome, Dave. And one other thing too that I appreciate, when you're rattling off some of your contributors, it seems like you're really bringing together people from different podcasts, different blogs, whatever it is. I heard Danny broadcast, Chris, obviously Canucks Conversation with you, Sean Warren, Area 51. So there's a Brett Lee who does his own YouTube stuff. So there's a lot of, I love the diversity that you're building. Is that something that you want to do intentionally?
Oh, absolutely. I want so many different voices, and it's tough because I have, a lot of people want to write for Canucks Army, and I have a lot of people that send me messages and tell me to read their work. And, I try to as much as I can. I try to give as much feedback as possible, but sometimes it's just the way I envision the team is everybody's bringing a different voice. Like I don't want 8 people on the site saying the same thing. I want somebody giving one take here and then the next day having a different take here. That's what I want to see on Canucks Army. It's tough because a lot of people agree with the same stuff, but I want different voices. That's something I want. And I want, even for Danielle, who I have to give credit to Jackson, that was a Jackson hire. I want to see what she sees from her perspective, right? And I want to see what Brett sees from his perspective, and so on and so forth. I want to see what different people have to say about the same situation. So I think that's why, we haven't done a roundtable under me yet, but we will eventually. And just in general with the site, that's what I want Canucks Army to be. I want it to be a place of different viewpoints. I don't want, I don't send out memos in the morning and say, okay, guys, we have to be really negative. We have to be really positive today. That's not what happens. I want everybody to be themselves, and I want everybody to play to their strengths. And I want the site to be a place for every Canucks fan. I want a voice for every Canucks fan to be present on the site.
Well, it sounds like you're a pretty darn good manager to me, even though you're only 20 years old. I think I got 26 years on you, but that's okay. I always say respectfully, you and Harm and my son, obviously my own son, I'm old enough to be your guy's dad. So I'll take that as a compliment. I like being the papa of Twitter, if that's okay.
I do.
The other thing I was going to say, one more question about Canucks Army. When it comes to just the fact that you were 20, I presume that most of the writers are older than you. Has that ever come up a little bit where, you kind of feel weird giving them some people advice or direction, given that you're likely they're junior or younger than them?
No, not too much. I haven't really experienced, obviously I've had people on Twitter be like, "Oh, you're only 20, you suck," whatever. Just, you ignore that stuff, right? But I haven't had anybody. Well, Danielle actually on the broadcast, they had a 5-minute digression where they just talked about me for 5 minutes. And Danielle was laughing, and she's just like, sometimes I can't believe he's my editor because I'm only, again, like you said, I'm only 20, right? And but again, I feel like I pretty good advice, and I've got a pretty good level of expertise, just different things. And I mean, I've taken university writing courses, and I've learned a lot there. And I think giving that knowledge to people, and again, even Jackson and Durant, their big thing with me was fix going in and out of the passive and active voice. That was something I struggled with so much, and something so many young writers struggle with. And at first I was like, what are you guys talking about? All my voices are active. I'm like, what are you talking about? I learned it, and now I have the ability to teach that to other people. And that's something some of our writers struggle with. So I'm able to teach them that. So, I mean, I'm also not a real hard-nosed editor that is so hard on all the writers. I feel like the way I present my feedback is pretty fair. I always try to be nice in the way I present it. And I always try to be like, this is for you to become better. If you don't want to become better, then sure, we can publish it, but you won't be sticking around long if you're not trying to become better.
I'm just curious, Quads, do you say always write in the active, or do you say pick one or the other, but just stick there?
It's tough. So the way Drance told me was, it's okay to switch as long as you know you're switching and you're doing it intentionally for effect. So my problem was I wasn't doing it for effect at all. I was just doing it because I didn't know what I was doing. So I just kept doing it. And it wasn't until maybe like January of 2020 that I really started to get comfortable with it. And that was only after Jackson worked with me so much. And I was going through our old DMs today because I was trying to find a link he sent me to a Hunter S. Thompson piece. But I was scrolling and like his messages are just so long, the stuff he was telling me, and just, you've really got to fix this. And I was like, I know, teach me. So then I got different like reading material to help me learn this. And it was something I learned. But yeah, that was my big struggle as a writer. And I had those guys helping me out.
Oh, Dave, I appreciate your humility. And obviously you have a really deep and utmost respect to the people that have mentored you. And I think that's awesome. So no, keep that up. That's wonderful. So you're obviously a very good communicator when it comes to writing. You're also a very good communicator when it comes to verbalizing things. And let's move on now to talk about Canucks Conversation. So this is kind of funny because I guess you're technically Chris's boss when it comes to Canucks Army, but he was the one who started this podcast. Is that fair to say?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Yep. So how did you first get into it? Did you approach him or did he approach you?
So the absolute funniest part about Chris and I's relationship, like we're friends now. He's like on most of my clothing now. The funniest part was our relationship started when I DM'd him on Twitter in December of 2018 as a disgruntled Simon Fraser University student and said, hey, I want to start writing about the Canucks. I think I'm a good writer. Do you know where I can get started? And he got me in touch with the people at the Canuck Way. He was also there. We were contributors there for a bit. I took over as the site expert there in February. And then Faber left right when I started as site expert. He left for Canucks Army under Ryan Beach, which was really funny because he was avoiding me as his boss. And I was like, I'll get you one day. So then I became the boss of Canucks Army just so I could boss him around. No, that's not actually what happened. But that's basically our timeline. And then for Canucks Convo, I guested on the show. He called me his Sven Berchi because he'd call me up whenever a guest would cancel. I would go on the show in a heartbeat. I had done 3 or 4 guest appearances on the show. And then he's like telling me how he wants to move out to the mainland and do BCIT. He wants to go to radio school. And I was like, we should do this together, man. Like, we should do this. And we'd met a few times. Like, I met him at the draft. Same day I met you was the first day I met Faber in person. Awesome. And then we'd met here and there on a couple different projects or whatever. But yeah, he's now a really good friend of mine. I'm happy to call him a close friend. And I'm his boss, which is probably the best part about all of this.
I think that's amazing. And even I just love it physically. You just look at you guys and let's just say you guys have different body shapes. How's that?
Oh yeah. Oh, polar opposites. It's really funny.
No, I love Chris, and he go in for the big bear hug, and you just feel so safe with him. And then with you, I think if I hug you too hard, I'd probably crush you, just because not you're weak, but because
you might accidentally pick me up.
Oh, that's amazing. So obviously, there's some obvious differences between a podcast and and writing, but give me a couple of the nuances. Not necessarily which one you like better, but let's talk about the podcasting side for sure. What do you enjoy most about the podcasting side?
Mostly that I get to just bounce my ideas off Faber, right? Yeah. And I mean, he's always a text message away. Like if I have a writing idea and I'm like, hey, what do you think of this? Does this work? Like I have access to so many people who help me so much. Like this is a team effort for everything I do. But with the podcast, it's really just like we get together and it just flows for us. Like when you have, and I'm sure you can speak to this as you were co-hosting in my place one time.
Yeah, just once.
Exactly. You have chemistry with somebody, right? Like when you have chemistry behind a mic, it shows, right? And I mean, with Faber and I, we just clicked immediately as soon as we got behind the mics together. And now I know all his tendencies. He knows mine. Like, I'm really not comfortable. Well, I am comfortable, but not as comfortable as I would be with Faber if I'm co-hosting with someone else. Like, I had Harmon on to co-host, another guy who's like a friend of mine. Like, it's not like I just picked this guy off the street and said, hey, co-host with me. Like, I talked to Harmon a lot off air, not related to work, whatever. Like, Harmon and I are like buds, but even then it was kind of like awkward for me to not be with Faber behind the mic. And I mean, that's what makes it work for us, I think, is just I can bounce off him. I can tease him a lot and he knows I'm joking. Same goes for him. And I mean, you just can't really do that with other people. And I think that's a big part of our show, is just us talking about things that aren't hockey. Like, people love to hear about our personal lives. People love to hear about all this stuff. And that's why we incorporate a lot of that into our show. But with Canucks Army, obviously it's a totally different beast. Like, with Canucks Army, my main focus is to uphold a standard of excellence that was there before me. And I put a lot of pressure on myself to do that. Whereas with Canucks Convo, I'm just kind of like, okay, like, you know, it's our project, and I think we're doing a pretty good job, but I don't feel nearly as much pressure to perform at Canucks Conversation as I do at Canucks Army. So Favor might not like hearing that, but it's just a lot easier to just kind of relax and do a good job at Canucks Convo.
And I think that's fine, Quad. It's not like you're saying, I don't take it as seriously or I don't care. You care just as much, but you can tell just because you have a different role in each. And I really think that the chemistry between you and Faber does come across. And I know you guys have actually talked about it. I listen to every episode. I'm gonna admit something. I don't listen to a lot of podcasts, but yours is one that I do listen to, you know, every single episode. That. No, but it's true, because I do think that you guys do have a really good chemistry, and it'll show, right? It actually shows when it's not visual, when you're listening, you can tell when guys aren't clicking or when they're talking over each other.
Mm-hmm.
But you guys have seemed to find a really nice groove there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it's come from a lot of, like, you listen to our first interview when he was interviewing me as a guest on the show, like, it wasn't always like that. It took a while to get there. It took a couple times hanging out away from the mics. Even our first time in person, where we were kind of friends, but it was like our first time in person behind mics together. I think that was in January or February when I took over, or not took over, but started co-hosting with him, and he went with a regular co-host. Yeah, that was an awkward episode for sure. It was still us trying to figure it out. Now we've got it figured out, and it's just, yeah, it's like riding a bike every time we get back together.
So talk to me, how much time would you say between Canucks Army, writing and editing, Canucks Convo, recording, editing, although I'm sure Faber claims that he does most of the editing, and just promoting all your stuff on Twitter and other avenues, how much time would you say, either by day or by week, do you spend creating content, creating, producing, editing, sharing content of your own?
On my own. So when I'm editing, I mean, I put at least an hour each day into Canucks Army. You know, we usually have 2 articles on the site. Those need to get edited, right? Mm. And I'm always on Twitter. I'm always on top of stuff. We have a news team. Zach Lang does a lot of great work for us, getting stuff up, and it's super helpful to have that, because if I'm in class or I'm not around, or I've been working on a story all day and a little thing comes out, you know, instead of me stopping what I'm doing and going to write like a 150, 200 word news piece, I can send it to Zach and he'll get on it, right? And he gets it up for us. And I mean, that's super helpful to have at the site. It's a little bit newer. They didn't really have that much before. It's super helpful to have, though. We're able to like cover all the news and all that stuff. So that's something that's kind of taken off me a bit. But man, I mean, when the Canucks got eliminated from the playoffs, I'm not trying to brag here, but I spent like 10 hours each day on Saturday and Sunday, just last week, planning out content for the off season, making a clear content plan for everybody to follow, sending it to all of our writers, and just making it super clear what I want done, how I want it done, and just trying to, you know, make sure that the site, like I said, keeps that level of excellence, right? Like, I take that very seriously. So just working on making a solid content plan, getting all my dates correct and everything like that. Like, the draft's only, like, it's less than a month away, right? And we've got to get on that. We've got to cover that. And I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on. Thankfully, the Canucks don't have a pick in the first or second round, so we don't have much to talk about.
Well, that's one way to put it, yeah.
Exactly. But yeah, it's something I take pretty seriously, and yeah, I've got a really good support group, and I can't say enough good about them. But in terms of how much time I spend, I'd say I spend at least an hour each day on Canucks Army, maximum 3 hours typically, unless it's like I said, unless end of season and I'm doing a lot of content planning. Maximum 3 hours, and then obviously if I'm writing, it's a little bit different. That's probably when you're looking at maybe 2 to 4 hours spent on a thing. And I mean, when I do a big piece like that Ian Clark article that I just wrote, that was a process, right? Like, that started with 1,400 words, and then me trimming it down to 900, talking with different people, you know, talking to somebody from Columbus who knows the Ian Clark situation there very well, getting a quote from them, doing all this other stuff. Like, there's a lot of stuff that goes into it. And it's something I really enjoy. Like, writing is really what got me started, and it's my first love, I think. The radio side and the podcasting side is awesome, but writing is definitely where where I think I'm strongest.
Right. And then as Canucks Army, you said it could be anywhere 1 to 3 or 4 hours a day. It's kind of steady every single day. Whereas the podcast is like you record on this day, then you leave it for a bit, and you record on this day, right? So it's kind of more up and down or less steady, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we do Patreon. So Faber wasn't around today, so I did a Patreon by myself for our supporters, and we try to do non-hockey related topics, right? Like they're called Faber and Quad Shoot It, and we talk about life, just what's going on in our lives, how's school going, all this other stuff. And our listeners and our Patreon donors really like that. And today it was just me getting behind a mic talking about writing influences. And I was reading Hunter S. Thompson to our listeners, just reading his work and just telling people like about Jason Botchford and how that was Jason Botchford's favorite writer. And it was just a 35-minute conversation. I mean, it's work, but it doesn't feel like work to me. You know what I mean? Like I was just sitting behind my desk, behind a mic, talking by myself to our Patreon subscribers. And I mean, it doesn't feel like work. And I mean, that same can be said with the podcast. Like, yeah, we do 2 episodes a week, and that's tough when you're in school full time and doing Canucks Army full time. But it's something Chris and I both love. And man, like if there's anything I can say about Faber, it's that his work ethic is outstanding. And I think he makes me better and I make him better in that regard. So it's good that we're partners on that.
And that Ian Clark article was pretty cool because, as you know, my cousin is Dusty Emo, also a goaltending coach. And I know he keeps an eye on what's happening with the Canucks and their goaltending coach situations. But that's for another chat down the road. But that's pretty cool. Yeah. And you're doing all this on top of going to school full time still?
Yes. Yeah.
Wow. What are you taking?
Radio Arts and Entertainment with Faber.
As if you guys don't see each other enough.
Yeah, exactly. Tell me about it.
Yeah, one other thing before we get to actual Canucks talk, you and I were joking around just before we pressed the record button that we met at the day 2. So June 22nd was my birthday. So we met on my 46th birthday. Is that right? No, 45th birthday last year, June 22nd, 2019. And yeah, we were just hanging out, chatting for 10, 15 minutes in the upper concourse of Rogers Arena. You have come so far so quickly. Like since then, it's been amazing, especially just the 2 kind of aspects we just talked about, Canucks Conversation and Canucks Army. What's the career goal, Dave? What's the path? What's the ultimate if everything works well for you? Or maybe you don't know yet because you're only 20 years old.
The goal, I'd say, is right now to be a beat reporter who is still able to do a podcast on the weekends or during the week. And I mean, you know, when I look at who it would be, like whose job, it would be either what JPAT was doing, what Drance is doing now, what Botch was doing. Like, I want to be covering the team. I want to be writing about the team every day, and I want to be able to talk about them as well. And hopefully it's with Faber. And we've also talked a lot about a radio show. And I mean, Faber and I on the radio together every day would be great. I'd absolutely love that. So yeah, I mean, I'm trying to keep all my options open. I'm also really liking the technical side of the game and kind of learning a lot about goaltenders. I mean, maybe there's a future in that and working for an organization. Like, who knows? I really don't know where this is going to take me, but I do know I want to stay with hockey, with baseball as well, which I really like. But there's not too much of a market for baseball here, so it's going to be hockey for sure.
No, for sure. And if we start talking about baseball, I'd have to leave the office, so that's okay. No, that's fine. I like baseball, but that's really cool. So as long as it's within hockey, and it sounds like preferably with the Vancouver Canucks, about the Vancouver Canucks somehow.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I don't think there's an organization I know more about. And I mean, I've learned a lot about the organization. I have so many contacts now just surrounding the organization, right? Like other media members in this market. Like I couldn't even imagine trying to go into a new market with no contacts and just all the connections I've made. Like that was no easy feat. So to walk away from all that would be really tough. But again, who knows, right? It might take me to another city one day. We'll have to wait and see, but hopefully it's the Canucks.
Awesome. So let's talk about that team that both you and I love so dearly. Overall, just looking back, you know, going to Game 7 in the second round, add in a play-in series. So we participated in 3 postseason rounds. Successful season, or do you think we could have even done better?
Oh, super successful season. I mean, how could it be anything but, right? Like they said right at the start of training camp, like our goal is to make the playoffs. And going into next year, like they've raised the bar in this city. And I think that's something Canucks fans have wanted for a long time and something the Canucks fans have deserved for a long time, right? Like now the bar is set. If they don't make the playoffs next year, that's a failure. They're trying to make the playoffs. So if they don't, that's a failure, right? And the players aren't going to be happy with themselves. Management's not going to be happy with themselves. The coaches aren't going to be happy with themselves. And the fans aren't going to be happy with any of the above if that's the case next year. So, I mean, it's really good to see that they made the playoffs. And I mean, that's a success in its own right. And now I wouldn't even say, oh, they have to go further. They have to go to the Western Conference next year or it's a failure. No, they just have to make the playoffs next year, because if you're not competing in the playoffs, the season was just a waste, right? Yep. Every year you have Elias Pettersson under contract, Quinn Hughes, Brock Besser, this young core. Every year you miss the playoffs with those guys, that's a failure, right? And that's something the Canucks are going to be looking at now. They're going to be trying to compete from here on out. And I mean, what can you say about the two young guys that led them there, right? And I mean, just natural progression of them. Hopefully it's enough to get them in the dance next year.
Absolutely. And a great point. And it was almost refreshing yet still crazy, because Canucks Twitter is always crazy, that people are fighting, right, about who should be in the lineup, who shouldn't be in the lineup. But we haven't had those type of fights in about 5 years. So I guess you can take it if you want it, kind of thing.
I think everybody could kind of agree Jason Magna didn't belong on the first line back in the day. So there wasn't too much to argue about there.
Well said. Well said. The one question that everyone's talking about, and I know you've written about it, you've talked about it too, this whole Markstrom Demko thing, obviously a good situation, almost an embarrassment of riches. Put on your, whatever you call it, that fortune teller hat. What do you think is going to end up happening? Not just this summer in the next month, but going forward past the expansion draft?
So what I think is going to end up happening, what I think Jim Benning and his group are going to do is I think they're going to re-sign Markstrom. And I think that's the right move. It was funny, Chris and I recorded right after the Canucks got eliminated, and we were kind of throwing out the ideas like, well, they can walk away from Markstrom now. They got Demko. Look at this guy. And then I talked to Kevin Woodley, the goaltending guru, most informative conversation I've ever had on Canucks Conversation for sure. Talked to him like by myself for like 40 minutes because Faber was stuck in traffic. And we
by yourself is a good way of putting it. You asked a question, he went on for about 25 minutes.
Exactly. He's great. I love talking to Kevin Woodley. Can't say enough good things about him. But he really put it into perspective for me. Like he said, like, okay, let's talk about if you lose Markstrom, right? If they let Markstrom walk in free agency, they have to sign a backup for Demko, right? And that backup almost has to be a 1B caliber. So we look at a guy like Thomas Greiss. Okay, how much is he going to come in for? You're looking at about 2.5 to 3.5 million. What's Markstrom going to come in at? Likely not too much higher than that. I'm really thinking it's going to be less than $6 million play. I really am. I know they're going to try and stay short on the terms. You know, every report has indicated that they're playing hardball. They're not just throwing a blank check at Markstrom. Which is good, I guess. It's good that they're trying to keep the cap hit low and they're trying to keep the term low. But the thing that Woodley and I, when we were talking, really identified was that they're really going to want to keep this to a short-term deal, right? Like you don't want to handcuff yourself to Markstrom for 5+ years when you've got Thatcher Demko already knocking at the door, Michael DiPietro, Artur Silov knocking soon potentially, right? Like DiPietro took a huge step this year in the AHL. Like coming in your first year and being a competent AHL starter is massive. Like the jump from junior to the AHL is bigger than the jump from the AHL to the NHL for a goaltender. That's Kevin Woodley's words, not mine. But he's absolutely right. And I mean, it was huge to see DiPietro do that and he had so much success. So, I mean, it's tough, but if I'm the Canucks and what I think the Canucks are going to do, I think they're going to re-sign Markstrom, and I think they're going to do exactly what they should do and try and keep that term low because, you know, what I was getting at there is if they let him walk, they sign a backup, they're only going to get about maximum $4 million in cap savings. Are they really going to be able to repair the blue line to the point where they can mask all the holes that Jacob Markstrom masks for them every single night? I don't think it's enough.
I hear you. So then, okay, so we signed Markstrom. We have both these guys. Do we have both those guys past the trade deadline?
Ooh, that's another great question. I mean, you know, the longer you wait, the more their value goes down, right? Like the more their value goes down. And you know what? It's tough. It totally depends how the season's going. Like, ask me, are the Canucks, did they lose Elias Pettersson on opening night, knock on wood, for the whole season, and now their season's gone crap, right?
Yeah, nice one.
I know, exactly. Knock on wood. But, you know, ask me, have they run into injury problems? Have they lost their star players who have carried them to this point, right? Like, ask me then, because if the Canucks are not going to make the playoffs and at the deadline they have to be sellers, then, yeah, of course they have to move a goaltender. But if they're in the thick of a playoff race and the two goaltenders that got them there in a, remember, pretty compacted season that could potentially have travel included, teams are going to really need two good goaltenders. So if the Canucks are competing, I think they will be. I don't see them moving a goaltender at the deadline.
Right. And then working your butt off after the offseason to try and figure out what you can do for the expansion draft, I presume.
Exactly. Yeah,
very
exactly.
good.
And I mean, that throws a fork in everything, right? It just makes
Yeah.
it so much more. There's another whole aspect to look at when you look at all of this. It's crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. It's gonna shade the way that they do their contract extensions and free agent signings going forward.
Yep.
It's crazy. So speaking of the UFAs, everyone would agree that it's the big three of Markstrom, Toffoli, and Tanev. And it's interesting, Quads. As soon as Toffoli came, 10 points in 10 games, I had him above Tanev in my ranking. Then Toffoli gets hurt in the first postseason game, and Tanev has an awesome series against Minnesota. And now I'm thinking, oh yeah, Tanev's the priority. And then Toffoli comes back, and you find out he came back 3 weeks early from a
Yeah.
massive injury. And you look at injury, you look at Tanev's history. Now I'm all over the place. Do you anticipate either, both, one of those guys back in a Canucks uniform whenever the season starts?
I think Toffoli is still their higher priority, as
Yep.
you know, and I give him credit for that. I think that's where it should be, right? Like, I think Toffoli is a higher priority for this team than Chris Tanev right now. There's a lot of people that have shown with graphs and all the fancy data, Harmon included, that Tanev's actual game has kind of been on a decline, right? So this is the time where he's going to cash in on a contract. Like, this for Tanev is going to be a big contract, right? And I don't think the Canucks really want to be the ones to sign it. I know he really wants to stay in Vancouver.
Yeah.
But again, same sort of thing with Markstrom. I don't think it can be too long of a deal. I don't think so. But where with Toffoli, I think they're pretty safe if they look at 5 years, 4 or 5 years on that deal. I think that's about what Toffoli's going to be asking for. And I think the Canucks are pretty safe signing that deal. So they know he already has success with Elias Pettersson. Obviously he was hurt in the playoffs, as you mentioned. So it's tough to be like, oh, well, look how he performed in the playoffs. You can't sign him. He was playing through an injury, right?
Yes.
And then Tanev, what can you say about him? Plays through a lot of injuries as well. So it's tough because he gets hurt a little bit more than Toffoli does.
Yeah.
This was his first complete season. And if the season went to 82 games, he wouldn't have done it, right? I think, didn't he get hurt in the last game?
He did.
He would have. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's, it's good that he played a full season. But again, like, you can't really go all in on Tanev, I don't think. I think there has to be a backup plan in place. I think there is one in place for the organization, but I think for the organization, their priority list is Markstrom, then Toffoli, and then Tanev down there.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And the Canucks top six sure looks a lot better when Toffoli's in it. And then you take him out, and suddenly it becomes really weak on the right side, especially if you don't know what's going to happen with Levo or Virtanen. So let's talk about, by the way, with Toffoli, the only thing I agree with you about a 4 or 5 year, contract, maybe it's $4.5, $5 million. He's making 4. So maybe it's going to be $5 million. I just worry that the 4th or 5th year of that contract, that we kind of regret it. Cause that's kind of always what happens, right? With guys who are getting on the other side of 30 years old. That's the only thing I worry about with Toffoli for sure.
Yeah, that's fair. You look at like age declining and everything like that. It kind of lines up with that age. So that's a fair concern to have. I mean, how confident are the Canucks? How confident are you that Toffoli can just keep that energy that he had with Pettersson, right? And he's going to be playing with Pearson next year, presumably, if they keep the same lines that they did in the playoffs.
Yep.
I think that's a line that could work for either Pettersson or Horvat, right? Like, having Toffoli there, that's good. And his work on the power play is huge for the Canucks as well. And I mean, when you've got guys like the Philly Pod Colson and Niels Höglander, I'm not as high on Höglander. I don't know if he's going to step in and have an immediate impact like I think Pod Colson will.
Right.
When you've got those guys coming in on ELCs, like, that's only going to make your bottom 6 better, right? And I mean, making sure that top 6 is well enforced and can really, get you where you need to be. I think that's going to be the main priority for the Canucks.
Beautiful. And even if we're ever unsure about Podkolzin or Höglander, we just got to ask Faber, and I'm sure he'll
exactly.
Yep. Let's turn our attention to the 2 RFAs that have commanded the most attention here. That's because they're both local boys. We're talking about Jake Virtanen and Troy Stecher. What's your gut feeling on both of those guys, Quads?
I think Jake Virtanen's going to get traded. I do. I think, it was funny. I said on our show, after that press conference with Jim Benning, like, I said, Jim Benning basically just read Jake Virtanen's eulogy in front of the whole media. Like, that didn't sound like a guy who wants to re-sign.
Nor does it do much for his trade value, though, either. So, like,
yeah, exactly. There's that aspect of it as well. But I mean, I don't think we're going to see Jake Virtanen back in a Canucks uniform. It's just kind of like a gut feeling I've got. And then for Stecher, I mean, he's kind of in a similar situation to Ben Hutton last year. I think there's a bit more interest from the organization to bring him back than there was to bring back Hutton. So we'll have to wait and see. But to me, like, I think the more likely of the two to see back in a Canucks uniform is Troy Stecher.
So let's imagine Tanev goes, which I would agree with, and Stetcher 50-50 comes back. So now you're looking potentially, without a massive free agent signing, you're looking at a top four of Hughes and Edler on the left. You have Myers and Stetcher on the right. Then there's this bottom pairing, and it looks like the door's open. You know, Fantenberg probably UFA gone, Ben one more year, we'll see. But then you have these three young guys of Juolevi, of Rathbone, and Rafferty. Of those three, do you see any of them being on the opening night roster between Juolevi, Rafferty, and Rathbone?
I think kind of in the order you actually laid out there. I think Rathbone has the best chance, and then I think Juolevi is also going to be fighting for that spot. So what I see, you know, as being a possible avenue for the Canucks, you know, they've got 1 year left of Jordy Ben at $2 million.
Yep.
Battenberg, they're probably going to have to let go. Jordy Ben can be your seventh D-man. But if he can't, you've got Juolevi and Rathbone, right? And that's the thing. Like, one of these guys can make the roster. And what I think we're going to see in training camp when that happens, I think it's November, we're going to be back at the rink. What you're going to see is a fierce battle between Rathbone and Juolevi, not against each other, but fighting for the same spot, right?
Yep.
Like, these guys are both going to be coming into camp, seeing that there's a spot on that left side blue line open. You know, right now there is. Maybe they'll find somebody, who knows.
Yeah.
You know, right now there's an opening, right? And if the Canucks can get a left side blue line consisting of Quinn Hughes, Jack Rathbone, and Olli Juolevi, the latter two of which are going to be on ELCs the year after Alex Edler leaves after next season, I'd be more than happy with that. Like, that's a cost-controlled blue line that can move the puck. Like, all three of those guys can move the puck extremely well. Rathbone's a bit of a better skater than Juolevi, no doubt. But, you know, Juolevi, you watch him play, right? And, I mean, I watched him really closely at training camp. And the way he's able to use the boards to just bounce pucks off and just get passes up using the boards and around forecheckers and whatever, like, Juolevi's really good at that. Juolevi's really good at breaking the puck out. And, you know, he's not going to wheel the puck out. He's not going to be Quinn Hughes. You know, he's never going to live up to a fifth-round pick expectations. But he could be very good for the Canucks. He could be pushing a top four spot, but I think the more likely is we'll see him in a bottom pairing role, and we'll see Jack Rathbone in the top four spot going forward. So as for next year, I think it's going to be Jack Rathbone that has a better chance of making the Canucks, but I think you're going to see Juolevi and him both fighting for that bottom pairing spot, and whoever makes it, and then Jordy Ben gets demoted to the 7th D spot. And I think the Canucks are more than happy with that.
Right. And then Jordy Ben does have the versatility of playing both sides if he needs to.
Exactly.
But no, I do like that 2 seasons from now with no Alex Edler. Imagine Hughes, Rathbone, and Juolevi down the left side. That is intriguing to me. A little young, but intriguing to me. All right, let's wind up, Quads. I have my what I call the 5-hole, and it's basically 5 questions. You can 2 of them are Canucks related, 3 of them are more personal. You can answer these as broadly, as narrowly as you want, whatever you want. You ready to go?
Oh yeah.
All right. Number 1, the sport that you excel the most in is
baseball.
Yeah. Tell me really quickly about that. What position and how long have you played?
I was a pitcher, and I had a really good changeup. And then I played second base as well and a bit of outfield. Really, I played everywhere. The only place I didn't play a lot of was shortstop, but that was always because my team had a really good shortstop. So I would play like third base, second base, first base I never played. But basically everywhere on the field I would play. That's
awesome. And what level did you get to?
I played till I was 18 or no, 18. And I was going to play men's league this year. There's like a bit of a competitive men's league that the association puts on here. So that was going to happen, but then COVID put a fork in that. But yeah, it was going to be a U25 league. So I was going to play my first year of that. Yeah.
Well, now I know who to come to for our slow pitch mat ball coaching that we need some help. Okay. I'm going to come back to you in a little bit.
I could help. You should get Faber. Faber, man, he played higher level than me. Like, Faber was going to go to college on a scholarship for baseball. Like, I don't know if you saw the video of him at Nat Bailey Stadium.
I did.
The guy can hit bombs. Like, he reminds me, I played against guys like Faber. Like, the kid, you're like 13, everybody's about, under 5 feet. Some people are over 5 feet. And then this like 6-foot giant comes in with 2 baseball bats in his bag that he's got. And he's like, comes up, his helmet doesn't fit him. And he just comes up, hits bombs, hits fourth in the lineup. That was Faber. And he always plays first base, and he's always left-handed. That's Faber. Like, he fits that bill perfectly. So
you're asking who let the dad in. Exactly. That's pretty cool. Number 2, you're starting a team from scratch. Elias Pettersson or Quinn Hughes?
Oh, what a question. Quinn Hughes. I think defense, especially a defenseman like Quinn Hughes, is so important. I think Elias Pettersson's going to be a great player for many, many years. I think he's going to be in the Hart Trophy conversation for many, many years. Like, I think he should have been in it this year, if I'm being honest.
Yeah.
You look at all the underlying data, whatever. But I think once his supporting cast gets a bit better, you're going to see Elias Pettersson start to take another step. And I think we've yet to see the best from both of these guys, but if I'm starting an organization, I go with the defenseman.
Yeah. And let's be lucky and blessed that we have both, obviously. You're right. Still in their entry-level contracts. Very cool. Number 3, you won't offend me either way because I'm half of each. Do you prefer Japanese food or Chinese food?
I'm allergic to peanuts, so the peanut oil in Chinese food is not good for me. So Japanese food for sure.
Okay, that is my favorite, but not because I'm allergic as well. Okay, speaking of food, this guy is paying for dinner, so you just got to pick who you're going with: Jim Benning, Travis Green, or Francesco Aquilini. Who you enjoying dinner with? Yeah,
Francesco for sure. Francesco what's that place he takes? Blue Water Cafe, I think it's called. The place he takes all the UFAs. We'd go there. We'd have a great meal. Francesco, for sure it'd be Francesco, I think.
And you feel comfortable talking to him about stuff, asking him questions?
Oh, for sure. I wouldn't talk to him about the Canucks at all. That's one thing Faber will tell you. Outside of work and when I'm like not working, I'm not huge into talking about the Canucks with people. I would ask Francesco a bunch of different questions. Because you're a baseball fan? Tell me about yourself a bit. And that's the conversation Francesco and I would have if we went out to Blue Water Cafe.
Love it, love it, love it. And
but I have to add, Jim Benning's a very nice man, as is Travis Green. And Travis Green can teach me a thing or two about poker because a lot of us, the Vancouver media people, we played a few poker games together. Daniel Wagner took all of our money. Like, I was out on the first hand. These guys were like laughing at me. I was learning poker the day of our it wasn't big, but a game we had, and I was just getting smoked. And Daniel Wagner was like bullying everybody. It was insane. That guy is a great poker player, but so is Travis Green. So
yes, I've heard
lessons from him.
Yeah, so Green's a poker player. Jim Benning's kind of like the nice uncle who tells all the good stories, and then and then Francesco Aquilini would be a lot of fun for sure. All right, lastly,
dinner.
Yeah, that's awesome. Lastly, what's one thing, Quads, that people or not a lot of people know about you that you feel comfortable sharing? So I'll give you a couple seconds. This one's a bit of a stumper.
I got it.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
I think something people recently found out about me that I play the clarinet. Not well, but I do play the clarinet. I recently got back into it. Our Patreon subscribers were subject to the David Quadrelli Clarinet Symphony Experience, I think we called it. And it was just me at this very desk with a mic, with my clarinet, playing right into the mic. And it was not great. It was not great. I was playing the classics, though. Mary Had a Little Lamb, Fun.
All the 3-note songs.
Kinda.
Yeah.
Exactly. I had Mary Had a Little Lamb, Baba Black Sheep, the alphabet song. Those are my specialties.
I love it. Well, I'm always looking for ideas for Canucks parody songs, and I've never had a clarinet player in one, so we can chat.
You send me some sheet music, I'll have it learned in a month.
That's amazing. Well, Dave, I really appreciate the time, and I truly, that we chat actually outside of Canuck social media a lot, and I do, I think we have a healthy respect for one another. But no, truly, you're doing some awesome work, and I cannot wait to see how you take Canucks Army to the next level, as well as your podcast, as long as Faber lets you. So, congratulations once again, and I really appreciate you taking the time today, Dave.
Thank you, Clay. All the best to you and your family, and keep up the good work on the YouTube channel.
Thanks, brother. We'll have to do this again soon.
Absolutely.
All right. Take care.